Hey everyone, I wanted to show you a new tool I wrote for Blender called Vertex Color Toolkit, which you can see I've opened here on the sidebar. To start, we'll go into flat shading mode, turn off the outline, and we'll go to attribute, which is where we can display our vertex colors. So to start, I have 4 objects here: the leaves, the tree, the base kind of mulch area, and then the planter itself. So if we select all of them, you can look at the toolkit here. We have collectors, which is kind of controlling how the objects are grouped together. In this case, it's grouping each face as its own collection. You can do it on an object base, per vertex, or shell of a mesh, or UV islands. So from there, we can go into the sorters, which will sort those groups based on a variety of different methods here. And then lastly, you can go into the transformer, which kind of manipulates the way that they are sorted. And then the bread and butter here is the assigner, which you can do solid color, gradient, or color list. And then you can control which channels get affected and what vertex color channel the data is saved. And we have some utilities we'll get into later. So we'll go ahead and apply the defaults. You can see we get a nice gradation from blue to red on the Z position. So if we do it on an object level, you'll see the colors are a bit more harsh because it's doing it on the entire object as a solid color, but as a gradient between objects. And what we can do is per vertex, like I said, you can do it based on individual shells of a mesh, and lastly the islands. So you can see here each one gets a bit more of a color. And if we go into the sorters here, we have quite a range here. We can do bounding box size. I imagine the leaves will all be quite similar. There is a little variation there, you can see. And you can do it on all the objects at once. You can do conical. This one will probably be most visible when you do it on a vertex level because it's doing a kind of a radial gradient, like a clock though. So you can see it's going from blue in a circular fashion back to red. We have cylindrical, which is doing kind of just that, a cylindrical gradient. I didn't want to do it on per vertex. I wanted to do it on the face. We'll let that run. We'll change it to the per face method, but you can see it did go ahead and apply. So you can kind of see it's doing a radial gradient there. We have directional, which you can pick a reference object and you can kind of orient that object however you want. But if it's not defined, it'll use the world origin. So this is useful if you're trying to maybe do, dust on top of an object, and you want the top to have a certain vertex color versus the sides. You can control the thresholds and the fall off here to kind of fine tune that control of coloring. Distance to object, which is just that. You can pick your target object. Hierarchy, which is based on the linking of parent to child. We have island perimeter, so that's useful if you have a mesh that, let's go ahead and we'll run it on this guy. You'll see the edges are getting red and the interfaces are blue. So this is a useful and fun one to mess with if you're trying to get maybe some wear and tear on the edges of a mesh or an object. This applies it by sorting the objects by their name or vertices by their IDs, as well as faces. Position in the world, X, Y, and Z. Then we have proximity to path. This one is a fun one as well. You can create a curve here in Blender and then pick that and sample it. And then this will colorize those things based on that path. So if we go into modeling, and let's go to, so if we throw a curve in here and we'll kind of just rotate it around a little bit, stick it into our tree. We will find our curve here. We'll just apply it to our leaves. And just for the fun of it, let's go ahead and maybe change up the color. We'll add yellow in here. And we'll maybe go to green. So now if we select them and sort by proximity to path on the face, hit apply, you can see the ones closest to the spline are red, which you can see back in here. So that's useful. And we also have random, which is just randomizing them. We'll do it on this one per shell by colors. So that one's always a fun one to mess with. You can adjust the seeding. And then we have UV position. And then we also have by volume. So all quite useful for random use cases. We'll go ahead and go into the transformer. So for this one, I'm going to create an array of objects. It'll make it a little bit easier to visualize what's happening. So let's go into add, and we'll just go ahead and add a cone here. We'll copy that a couple times. Alright, so we have our arrangement of cones here. So what we can do initially is we'll just go ahead and do a straight positional sort, and we'll do it on the Y. You can see we get from red to green. So what we can do with the transformers, and this will work with any of the sorters, you can kind of play with the pattern in which the colors are assigned. So if we do chunks, and we'll do 3, we'll just do 2 colors here. Let's do red and this light blue. It's going to break it up into 3 chunks as evenly as possible. In this case, let's just do maybe 4. So you can see we get 4 colors, each color having 4 cylinders. So that's pretty useful if you're trying to segment and kind of make bands of vertex colors. You can do easing, and this plays around with the transition in which the colors are being applied. So if we do easing, in and out, we'll do bounce back, and you can kind of see it's playing around with almost the sharpness in which the fall off of transition from color to color. And then the last one we have is pattern. So that's like making a dashed line. Think of it like that. So if we do 1, 3, let's do 4, and then it'll just repeat after that. We'll hit apply colors. And you can see we got 1 color of red, the next 3 are blue, and the next 4 are the additional color, and then it repeats after that. So if we added another color in here, it's going to be more noticeable. And then you can also try on index mode, and that's going to control, in this case it didn't visually change very much, but that's going to control how it's stepping from color to color. And then lastly, you can add noise in here to get some variation. You can see that one's a little bit subtle. If we do 1, you'll get a bit more of a drastic change. So that's 2.5, and helps break up the pattern a bit to not be so linear. So again, all useful features. The noise exists on all these assignments here. So the difference between gradient and gradient list: gradient will always do a transition from color to color. Gradient list, there's no transition between the colors. It's a harsh switch from red to blue to green. There's no, reddish to blue, which gets you these pink colors. So if we go ahead and apply this, you can see it's a bit more. Well, if I take off the noise, you'll see it's one color or the other. There's no in between. You can do index mode, and what that does is it controls the number of items that get assigned that color before moving to the next color in the list. So this is also useful for doing specific types of patterns. Again, the noise will work here as well. So the last thing we have here is some utilities. We can do normals by color. You can do it based on the world normals or the object. So in this case, we'll just assign these also to the same color channel which we were using here, which is just color. So we'll select one of these objects and go ahead and hit apply. You can see we get the normals baked into the colors, and you can turn off to normalize the range or not. And there's tooltips in these a lot of these items here in the UI, so that should help any questions or answers you might have. The last thing I want to show you was Subobject mode. So when you go into edit mode, which is one of the nice things about this tool, we'll go back to the tree here. We'll select our tree. And we'll go into edit mode. All of these sorting elements in the Vertex Color Toolkit will work on Subobject mode. So if we go into face mode and say we just want to affect these guys here, we can actually just choose to affect them. Again, they have methods controlling what the sub-object levels will work like and how they'll be treated. So if we did shell, each leaf will get a random color. So again, you're not stuck to doing the entire object at once. You can work on a sub-object basis, which can be real useful to isolate issues. And that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or requests or maybe some new sorters you would like to see, feel free to reach out, and I hope you enjoy the tool. Thanks.